My name is Pam, and I am 32 years old. After years of saving every penny from my software engineering job, I finally bought my dream home last month. The feeling of having my own space after years of overpriced rentals was indescribable. I decided not to tell my parents immediately, because they have a habit of inserting themselves into every decision I make. Little did I know that keeping this secret would lead to finding my front door lock completely changed one day after work. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button, and prepare yourself for a family drama that might seem familiar to many of you. For the past 5 years, I have been working as a software engineer at a major tech company in Chicago. The job pays well, but living in the city is expensive, and saving for a house deposit seemed like an impossible dream at times. I cut back on everything from coffee runs to vacations. My coworkers would jet off to tropical destinations while I stayed home building my savings account one paycheck at a time. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with barely enough room for a bed and desk, sharing a bathroom with 3 other units on my floor. The sacrifice was worth it because I had a clear goal: financial independence through home ownership. My relationship with my family has always been complicated. I love them, but there is a dynamic that has existed since childhood that I have never been able to shake. My parents, Richard and Nancy, have always favored my older sister, Olivia. She was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the odd one out, the one who never quite fit their expectations. Olivia married young to Frank, had 3 kids, and settled into the picture-perfect family life my parents always wanted. Meanwhile, I focused on my education and career choices that my parents never fully supported. Olivia and Frank have always lived beyond their means. Their house is too big, their cars too expensive, and their vacations too lavish. Frank works in sales with an unpredictable income, while Olivia has been a stay-at-home mom since their first child was born. Despite their financial instability, my parents have always been there to bail them out, something they never did for me when I struggled during college or when I was laid off early in my career. The pattern of parental interference in my life is long and frustrating. When I received a scholarship to MIT for computer science, my parents insisted I attend the local state university instead to stay close to home. When I dated Jacob, a wonderful man who happened to be divorced with a child, my parents made their disapproval so clear that it eventually contributed to our breakup. When I was offered a job in Seattle at a prestigious tech firm, they guilted me into turning it down to stay in Chicago, claiming my aging grandmother needed me nearby, only to rarely visit her myself. So when I finally saved enough for a down payment and started house hunting, I made a conscious decision to keep it to myself. No input, no criticism, no attempts to steer me toward a house near them or away from neighborhoods they deemed unsafe or unsuitable. This was going to be my decision and mine alone. The house hunting process was exhausting but exhilarating. I spent 3 months viewing properties every weekend, researching neighborhoods and calculating mortgage rates. Then, one Saturday, my realtor Julia showed me a charming 2-story classic home in an older, established neighborhood. The moment I walked through the front door, I felt something I had never experienced before in any other property, a sense of belonging. The house was built in the 1920s, with hardwood floors throughout, large windows that let in beautiful natural light, and a small reading nook under the stairs that seemed designed just for me. The kitchen had been updated, but still retained vintage elements, like the original farmhouse sink. Upstairs, there were 3 bedrooms, including a master suite with a clawfoot tub in the ensuite bathroom. The backyard was small but perfect, with a mature oak tree providing shade for a patio area. The asking price was at the very top of my budget, but I knew immediately this was my home. I submitted an offer that same day, and after some negotiation, it was accepted. The inspection went well, revealing only minor issues that could be easily addressed. The mortgage approval process was nerve-wracking, but my excellent credit score and stable employment history worked in my favor. The day I signed the final papers and received the keys was one of the proudest moments of my life. I had done this entirely on my own, without financial help from anyone. The real estate agent congratulated me warmly, saying it was refreshing to see a young single woman taking such a significant step toward building wealth and stability. As I drove to my new home that afternoon, keys in hand, I felt a sense of accomplishment that was purely my own, untainted by family opinions or interference. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if things would have turned out differently had I shared my house hunting journey with my parents from the beginning. But in that moment, all I felt was the sweet satisfaction of having made this huge life decision independently and the excitement of starting a new chapter in my own space. Moving day arrived on a sunny Saturday in April. I had hired a small moving company to handle my limited furniture, but most of my possessions fit in the trunk of my car. After years of living in cramped apartments, I did not have much to my name, beyond clothes, books, and electronics. The movers were efficient, and by noon, everything was inside my new home. I tipped them generously, then stood alone in my living room, surrounded by boxes and the endless possibilities of empty space. That first night in the house was magical. I ordered pizza, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on the floor of my empty living room, making lists of furniture I wanted to buy and projects I wanted to tackle. The house creaked and settled around me, each sound a welcome reminder that these walls were mine. I slept on a mattress on the floor of the master bedroom, but it was the best sleep I had gotten in years. Over the next few weeks, I poured all my free time into making the house a home. I painted the living room, a warm, sage green, installed bookshelves in the reading nook, and splurged on a comfortable sectional sofa that filled the space perfectly. I scoured thrift stores and estate sales for unique pieces, with character slowly filling each room with items that spoke to me. The dining room table came from an elderly couple downsizing after 50 years of marriage. The vintage desk in my home office belonged to a retired English professor. Each piece had a story, adding layers of history to my new beginning. It was during my second week in the house that I met Eleanor, my neighbor to the right. She was in her 70s, a retired librarian who had lived in her house for over 40 years. She brought over a homemade blueberry pie and welcomed me to the neighborhood. I watched the previous owners come and go, she told me, as we sat on my front porch. This house has good bones and good energy. I can tell you we'll be happy here. Eleanor was a wealth of information about the neighborhood. She pointed out which neighbors were friendly and which kept to themselves. She warned me about the temperamental mail carrier and recommended the best local shops and restaurants. As she was leaving, she mentioned something in passing that I did not think much of at the time. This house reminds me of the old Peterson place over on Maple Street. Same architectural style. Were they built by the same company, I wonder? I shrugged, not knowing anything about the history of the house beyond what was in the disclosure documents. I made a mental note to research it sometime, then promptly forgot as I became busy with work and settling in. By the third weekend, I felt ready to invite my closest friends over for a housewarming gathering. Maya, my best friend since college, arrived, first with a potted plant and a bottle of champagne. Zoe and her husband Tyler brought a gift basket of kitchen essentials. Ethan, my friend from work, contributed a smart home system that he insisted on setting up immediately. The evening was filled with laughter tours of each room and endless discussions about paint colors and furniture placement. As we sat around my new dining table, enjoying takeout and wine, Maya asked the question I had been dreading. So, when are your parents coming to see the place? I bet they will be so proud of you. The table went quiet, as everyone looked at me expectantly. I took a long sip of wine before answering. They do not know yet. Zoe nearly choked on her drink. What do you mean they do not know? Pam, you bought a house. That is huge news. I explained my reasoning, detailing the history of interference and criticism that had led me to make this decision privately. My friends listened, some nodding, in understanding, others looking skeptical. I get it, Tyler said. My parents are the same way. They would have had opinions about everything from the neighborhood to the age of the roof. But keeping it secret indefinitely seems extreme, Ethan countered. They are going to find out eventually, and will not it be worse the longer you wait? Maya, who had met my parents multiple times and witnessed their dynamic firsthand, pulled me aside later in the kitchen. I understand why you did this, she said quietly. But secrets have a way of creating bigger problems than the ones they are trying to avoid. The longer you wait, the more hurt they will be that you kept this from them. I know, I admitted. I just want to enjoy this achievement on my own terms for a little while. I will tell them when the time is right. Just do not wait too long, she warned. The right time has a way of never arriving. After my friends left, I sat alone on my porch swing, contemplating Maya's advice. Part of me knew she was right, but another part still relished the freedom of having this space that was wholly mine, unshaped by family opinions. I decided to give myself one more month to settle in before breaking the news. The following weeks were some of the happiest of my adult life. I established routines in my new home coffee in the backyard, in the mornings working from my home office 2 days a week, exploring the neighborhood on evening walks. I joined the local community garden and signed up for a furniture restoration class at the community center. For the first time in my life, I felt completely in control of my environment and my choices. But there were moments that gave me pause. Twice, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street, gone before I could get a good look at the driver. Once I had the distinct feeling of being watched as I unloaded groceries from my car. I dismissed these as the normal paranoia of a woman living alone for the first time, but installed motion sensor lights around the property just in case. Looking back, I should have recognized these as the first warning signs that my carefully constructed independence was about to be challenged in ways I never imagined. About a month after I moved in, I was pruning the rose bushes in my front yard when Eleanor came over with a thermos of iced tea. We sat on the porch steps watching the neighborhood children ride bikes up and down the sidewalk. I was looking through some old photo albums yesterday, Eleanor said, pouring tea into paper cups. And I found something interesting. A picture from the 1970s of the whole neighborhood at a block party. Your house is in the background. She handed me a faded color photograph. I could indeed see my house looking much the same as it did now, though with different colored shutters. The Millers owned it then, she continued. Lovely couple. Before them, it was the Johnsons. And before that, I believe it was owned by a family named Anderson. Relatives of yours, perhaps. I looked up sharply. Why would you think they were my relatives? Eleanor seemed surprised by my reaction. Oh, I just assumed you might have known about the connection. Your real estate agent mentioned something about the house staying in the family when she came by to leave some paperwork after you moved in. I thought that was why you chose this house. My heart began to race. What exactly did she say? Something about how nice it was that the house had come full circle back to the original family. I did not think much of it at the time. Eleanor studied my face. You did not know, did you? I shook my head slowly, my mind racing. Could it be a coincidence? Anderson was a common enough surname. But something about this revelation unsettled me deeply. After Eleanor left, I called my mother under the pretense of catching up. Our conversations were typically strained affairs where she talked about Olivia's children and local gossip while I shared carefully edited versions of my work life. This time, I cautiously steered the conversation toward family history. Mom, I was thinking about Grandma Rose recently. Did she and Grandpa ever live in the city, or were they always out in the suburbs? There was a brief pause before my mother answered. They had a place in the city when they first married somewhere on the north side. Why do you ask? Just curious. I was walking through an old neighborhood recently and wondered if they might have lived there. Which neighborhood? Her voice had an edge to it now. Westridge Gardens, I said, naming my new neighborhood. The silence that followed lasted so long, I thought we had lost the connection. Mom, are you there? Yes, her voice was tight. Pam, is there something you need to tell us? Your father and I were just talking about how we have not seen your apartment in over a year. Nothing specific, I said quickly. Just reminiscing. Well, speaking of housing, she continued, her tone brightening artificially. Olivia and Frank are looking for a new place. Frank lost his job last month and they need to downsize. Your father and I are helping them look. We might have found something perfect, actually. A charming older home with enough bedrooms for the kids. My stomach tightened. That is nice of you to help them. Family helps family, Pam. The implication that I somehow failed in this regard hung in the air between us. Anyway, when are you coming for dinner? It has been weeks since we have seen you. I made a vague excuse about work being busy and ended the call as quickly as possible. Minutes later, my phone pinged with a text from Olivia. Mom says you were asking about Grandma's old house. Weird coincidence. We are actually looking at houses in that area. Where are you living these days? Still in that tiny studio? I did not respond, my mind now fully occupied with the possible connection between my new home and my family history. That evening, I dug through the closing documents from my house purchase, looking for any clue. The chain of title showed 6 previous owners going back to the 1950s, none with my family name. But what about before that? I remembered a distant great-aunt on my mother's side, Jane, who was the family historian. We had never been close, but she had always sent birthday cards and graduation gifts. She lived in Florida, now having retired there years ago. I found her number and called, explaining that I was working on a personal project about family history. Aunt Jane, did Grandma and Grandpa Anderson ever own a house in Westridge Gardens on Sycamore Street specifically? There was a long pause before Jane answered. How did you find out about that house, Pam? My heart sank. So it is true. They did own it. Yes, they did. It was their first home after they married in 1948. They lived there until 1965, when they moved to the suburbs for better schools when your mother was about 10 years old. And what happened to the house then? They kept it as a rental property for many years. When your grandfather died in 1988, he left it to your mother and her brother, your Uncle David, with the understanding that it would stay in the family for future generations. But about 15 years ago, when the housing market was booming, they decided to sell it. Your uncle needed money for his business, and your parents wanted to help Olivia buy her first house. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture I did not want to see. So they sold a family heirloom to help Olivia. I could not keep the bitterness from my voice. It was a difficult decision, Jane said diplomatically. Your grandfather would have been disappointed. He always talked about keeping that house in the family for generations. But times change, and people make choices based on immediate needs. After thanking Jane for the information, I sat in my living room, looking around with new eyes. This house had been in my family, meant to stay in the family, but had been sold to help my sister. And now, by sheer coincidence, I had bought it back, without even knowing its significance. The irony was almost too perfect. I had purchased my first home in secret to avoid family interference, only to discover I had unknowingly reclaimed a piece of family history that had been sacrificed for my sister's benefit. As this realization sank in, I began to understand that my private victory was about to become the centerpiece of a family drama I had never anticipated. 3 days after my conversation with Aunt Jane, I returned home from work later than usual, having stayed for a team dinner. It was nearly 9 o'clock when I unlocked my front door and stepped inside. Immediately, I sensed something was off. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but small details caught my attention. A dining chair, slightly out of alignment, the throw pillow on the couch, rearranged, and most tellingly, an unfamiliar coffee mug in my kitchen sink. Someone had been in my house. My first instinct was to call the police, but as I reached for my phone, I remembered the security system Ethan had installed during the housewarming party. It included indoor cameras in the main living areas, activated by motion detection. With shaking hands, I opened the app on my phone and checked the footage from earlier that day. What I saw made my blood run cold. At 2:15 in the afternoon, a car pulled into my driveway. My parents got out, followed by my sister Olivia. They approached the front door and my mother produced a key which she inserted into the lock. When it failed to turn, she tried again, then shook the doorknob in frustration. They huddled in conversation on the porch before returning to their car and driving away. The next clip, time-stamped 3:45, showed them returning this time with a fourth person I did not recognize. This man carried a small case of tools, a locksmith. I watched in disbelief as they spoke with him, gesturing at the door. The locksmith examined the lock, shook his head, and appeared to ask questions. My father showed him something, presumably paperwork. Eventually, the locksmith packed up his tools and left without changing the lock, while my family stood on the porch, looking frustrated. The final clip showed them returning once more at 4:30. This time, my mother had another key, different from the first. When this one also failed to work, my father looked directly at the doorbell where one of the cameras was hidden. His face registered surprise, then concern. They left quickly after that. I sat on my couch, trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. My family had tried to enter my house without permission not once, but 3 times in a single day. They had brought a locksmith to change my locks. The violation was so extreme, it seemed unreal. I called Maya immediately. They did what she exclaimed, after I explained what had happened. That is breaking and entering, Pam. Or at least attempted breaking and entering. I do not understand how they even knew this was my house, I said. I never told them I bought a place, let alone this specific house. Could your real estate agent have said something? Or a neighbor? Maybe. But how did they get a key? That is what really scares me. You need to confront them, Maya said firmly. This is beyond inappropriate. It is illegal. I know. I just cannot believe they would do this. Call them right now. Put it on speaker. I want to hear their explanation. With Maya still on the line, I called my parents' home phone. My father answered on the second ring. Pam, is everything okay? You never call this late. No, everything is not okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I know you came to my house today. I know you tried to get in with a key, and when that did not work, you brought a locksmith. I want an explanation right now. There was a long silence followed by muffled voices as my father presumably told my mother about the call. Pamela, my mother's voice, came on the line. She only used my full name when she was angry or defensive. We were going to call you tomorrow. We did not realize you had changed the locks. Changed the. Mom, how did you even know where I live? How did you get a key to my house in the first place? We have known about the house for weeks, she said, as if it should have been obvious. Julia Ramirez is my cousin's daughter-in-law. When she told us you were buying the Anderson house, we could hardly believe it. My real estate agent. Of course. Julia had never mentioned any connection to my family. But in retrospect, she had asked unusually detailed questions about my background during our first meeting. That still does not explain why you thought it was okay to enter my home without permission, I said. Or why you brought a locksmith. My father took the phone back. Now, Pam, do not be dramatic. We were not breaking in. That house belonged to your grandparents. We were simply coming to discuss the situation with you. What situation, and why not call me first? We tried, my mother shouted in the background. You never answer? The situation, my father continued more calmly, is that we had been planning to help Olivia and Frank buy that house. We have been watching the market for years, waiting for it to become available again. It was supposed to be for them. My mind reeled. What do you mean supposed to be for them? Your sister needs that house, Pam. They have 3 children. Frank lost his job. They are about to lose their rental. We promised them we would help them get a bigger place, and when the Anderson house came on the market, it seemed perfect. We were getting the financing in order when you swooped in and bought it. I did not swoop in, I protested. I had no idea about any of this. I fell in love with the house and bought it, end of story. Well, we need to fix this, my mother said, having apparently taken the phone back. Olivia is devastated. The children were so excited about having their own rooms in the new house. Fix this. There is nothing to fix. I bought this house legally. It is mine. Do not be selfish, Pam, my mother snapped. You are one person. You do not need a 3-bedroom house. Your sister has a family. That is not the point I was nearly shouting now. You cannot just decide my house belongs to Olivia because you think she needs it more. We will discuss this in person, my father said, taking the phone again. Clearly there has been a misunderstanding. We will come by tomorrow evening. Before I could protest, he hung up. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Did you hear all that I asked Maya, who had been silent during the exchange? Every word she said. Pam, this is insane. They are treating you like a child who took a toy from her sister. This is your house. You bought it with your own money. They are coming tomorrow, I said, feeling suddenly exhausted. What am I going to do? You are going to stand your ground, Maya said firmly. This is your home, not theirs, not Olivia's, yours. After we hung up, I walked through each room of my house, touching the walls, the furniture, the objects I had carefully selected to create my sanctuary. The knowledge that my family had tried to invade this space, had planned to take it from me without even discussing it, filled me with a resolve I had never felt before. This house was mine, and I would not let anyone, not even family, take it from me. The next day at work I could barely focus. I told my manager I had a family emergency and took the afternoon off to prepare for the confrontation ahead. On the way home, I stopped to buy additional security cameras for the areas of the house not covered by the existing system. I also called a locksmith of my own to change all the exterior locks and install a deadbolt on my bedroom door just in case. At exactly 6 o'clock, a minivan pulled into my driveway, followed by my parents' sedan. I watched through the window as not just my parents and Olivia emerged, but also Frank and all 3 of their children. They had brought the entire family as if this were a casual dinner visit rather than a serious confrontation. I opened the door, before they could knock, or worse, try another key. I did not realize everyone was coming, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. We thought it would be good for you to see the whole family, my mother replied, ushering the children inside without waiting for an invitation. Pam, you remember your niece and nephews. Emma is 8 now. Jake is 6, and little Michael just turned 4. The children filed past me, eyes wide as they took in the house. Emma, the oldest, looked up at me and said, "Mommy says this is going to be our new house. I get the room with the window seat, right?" I shot a look at Olivia, who had the grace to appear embarrassed. "Emma, we talked about this," she murmured. "Nothing is decided yet. Let us all sit down and discuss this like adults," my father said, heading for the living room as if he owned the place. I followed, seething, but determined to remain calm. Once everyone was seated, my mother suggested the children go play in the backyard. Frank's brother would be coming soon to take them for ice cream while the adults talked. When the children were out of earshot, I turned to my family. Before anyone says anything else, I want to make it absolutely clear, this is my house. I bought it legally with my own money. I had no idea about its connection to our family until after I moved in, and I certainly had no idea you were planning to buy it for Olivia. Olivia, who had been examining the room with a calculating eye, burst into tears. "It is not fair, Pam. You know we have been struggling since Frank lost his job. The landlord is selling our rental, and we have to be out by the end of the month. Where are we supposed to go?" Frank, a tall man with perpetually angry eyes, leaned forward. "Your sister has 3 kids, Pam. 3. What do you need all this space for? Just you and your laptop, come on." "My personal space requirements are not the issue here," I said firmly. "The issue is that all of you seem to think you have some claim to my home to the point of trying to break in and change my locks." "No one was breaking in," my father insisted. "We have keys. Or at least, we had keys before you changed the locks." "How did you even get keys? I never gave you any." My mother looked away, a sure sign she was about to lie or omit something important. "Julia had an extra set from the showing. She thought we might want to see the place given the family connection." "That is completely unprofessional and possibly illegal," I said. "She gave you keys to a house that did not belong to you without the owner's permission." "Why are you being so difficult about this?" Olivia cried. "We need this house more than you do. The kids have already picked out their rooms. They are so excited about the backyard. You told your children they were moving into my house without even speaking to me." First, I was incredulous. "We tried to call you my mother," repeated. "You never answer." "That is not true, and you know it. I spoke to you just last week and you never mentioned anything about wanting to buy this house." "We were working out the details," my father said. "We did not want to get everyone's hopes up until we were sure. And then you had to go and buy it right out from under us," Frank added bitterly. "I did not buy it right out from under you," I insisted. "I had no idea you were interested in this property. None of you ever mentioned it." A tense silence fell over the room. Then my mother leaned forward, adopting the reasonable tone she used when she thought she was being the only adult in a situation. "Pam, darling, we understand you did not know. But now that you do, surely you can see that this house makes more sense for Olivia and her family. They need the space. You do not." "So what exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We have a proposal," my father said. "You sell the house to us at the price you paid for it. No profit, but no loss either. We will cover all the closing costs and fees." "Or," Olivia added quickly, "if you do not want to sell, maybe we could all live here together for a while, just until we find something else. You could keep the small bedroom upstairs, and we would take the master and the other room for the kids." I stared at them in disbelief. You want me to give up the master bedroom in my own house and squeeze into the small bedroom so you can move your entire family in. It would only be temporary, Frank said, though his tone suggested otherwise. 6 months, maybe a year tops. Absolutely not, I said. I am not selling my house, and I am certainly not turning it into a shared living space with 5 additional people. See? Frank exploded, turning to my parents. I told you she would be selfish about this. She has always been the selfish one. Frank Olivia hissed, but the damage was done. What do you mean, always been the selfish one? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. What exactly have you all been saying about me? No one would meet my eyes. Then my mother sighed heavily. Pam, you have to understand. Family helps family. Olivia has always understood that. She and Frank would do anything for us, for the whole family. You have always been more independent, more focused on yourself. More focused on myself, I repeated. You mean because I went to college instead of getting married at 20? Because I built a career instead of having children right away? Because I saved for my own house instead of asking you to buy one for me? That is not fair, Olivia protested. We are not asking them to buy a house for us, just to help with the down payment. Like they helped with your first house, I asked. The one you lost to foreclosure? Because Frank insisted on renovating with money you did not have. Or the second one that you had to sell at a loss when you decided the neighborhood was not good enough anymore? That is enough, my father said sharply. We did not come here to dredge up the past. No, you came here to take my house, I said. And I think we are finally getting to the truth of why. I walked to the built-in cabinet in the dining room and pulled out a folder of documents I had compiled the night before after my call with Aunt Jane. This house belonged to Grandma and Grandpa Anderson, I said, laying out photocopies of old deeds and tax records. They left it to you and Uncle David, Mom, with the understanding that it would stay in the family. But you sold it to help Olivia buy her first house. My mother paled. How did you find out about that? Aunt Jane told me. She also told me how disappointed Grandpa would have been. This house was supposed to stay in the family for generations. We needed the money, my mother said defensively. Olivia and Frank were starting their family. They needed help. And now, by complete coincidence, I have bought back the family home with my own money. And instead of being happy that it is back in the family, you want to take it from me and give it to Olivia. Again. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Frank stood up abruptly. This is bull, he said. We need that house. We have kids, for God's sake. Frank, sit down, my father ordered. We are trying to handle this civilly. But Frank was on a roll now. No, I am done being civil. Pam has always gotten special treatment because she is the smart one, the successful one. Meanwhile, we have been busting our asses trying to provide for our family, and now we are about to be homeless because she wants to play house. Special treatment, I nearly choked on the words. Are you kidding me? Olivia has always been the favorite. Always. Mom and Dad have bailed you too out of every financial mess you have created, while I have had to work for everything I have. Oh, poor Pam, Olivia mocked. So oppressed with your 6-figure job and your fancy degree. Some of us chose family over career, you know. And that was your choice, I shouted, finally losing my composure. Just like this is my house, my choice. The argument escalated with years of resentment and family dynamics bubbling to the surface. It came out that my parents had already begun measuring rooms and planning furniture placement before even speaking to me. Olivia admitted she had been driving by the house regularly since I bought it, trying to get a glimpse inside. Frank revealed they had already given notice at their rental, confident they would be moving into the family home soon. The final straw came when my mother said in a voice dripping with disappointment, "I never thought you would put a house above your own family, Pam. What would Grandma say if she knew you were keeping her home from her great-grandchildren?" Something snapped inside me. Grandma would say that I worked hard and earned this home on my own without taking anything from anyone else. She would be proud that I brought the house back into the family through my own efforts, not by manipulating and guilting others into giving me what I want. I stood up, shaking with anger and hurt. "I think you all need to leave now. This is my house. I bought it legally. I am not selling it, and I am not sharing it. If you want to help Olivia and Frank, help them find another place, just like I found this one on my own." "Pam, be reasonable," my father started, but I cut him off. "I am being reasonable. What is unreasonable is trying to claim ownership of something that is not yours. What is unreasonable is copying keys and bringing a locksmith to someone else's home. What is unreasonable is telling your children they are moving into a house that does not belong to you." I walked to the front door and held it open. "Please, leave, now." One by one they filed out, my mother crying softly, my father grim-faced, Olivia glaring, and Frank muttering under his breath. As they collected the children from the backyard, I heard Emma ask, "Are we not moving into Aunt Pam's house, after all?" The innocent question, and the realization of how far my family had gone in their presumption, was the final wound in an evening full of them. I closed the door behind them, engaged all the locks, and slid to the floor, finally allowing myself to cry. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. My head pounded from crying, and I felt emotionally drained from the confrontation. But beneath the hurt and exhaustion, a newfound determination was taking root. This was my home, and I needed to protect it. My first call was to a lawyer. Maya had recommended Rachel Goldstein, who specialized in real estate and family law. Rachel agreed to see me that afternoon. "Based on what you have told me, your position is very clear," Rachel said after hearing my story. "You are the legal owner of the property. Your family has no claim to it whatsoever, regardless of its history or their expectations." "Could they try to make a legal claim based on the fact that it was once family property?" I asked. The chain of title is clean. Your mother and uncle sold the property legally years ago. The fact that you subsequently purchased it does not create any right of reversion to other family members. Rachel recommended documenting all interactions with my family regarding the house, changing all locks and security codes, and sending a formal cease and desist letter if they continued to pressure me or attempt to enter the property without permission. "What about the real estate agent?" I asked. "She gave copies of my house keys to my parents without my knowledge or consent." "That is a serious ethical violation," Rachel confirmed. "You should report her to the State Real Estate Commission and the local Realtor Association. You might also have grounds for a civil complaint if you choose to pursue it." Armed with legal advice and reassurance, I left Rachel's office feeling more confident. On the way home, I stopped at a home improvement store to purchase additional security measures, a video doorbell, window sensors, and motion-activated floodlights for the yard. I spent the evening installing the new security devices and changing all my passwords, including the Wi-Fi network and security system. As I worked, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members. My parents sent a group text saying they were disappointed in my behavior. Olivia texted a photo of her children looking sad with the caption, "Thanks for making your niece and nephews cry." Even relatives I rarely spoke to began reaching out, clearly having heard a one-sided version of events. "Aunt Carol, your mother is heartbroken. How could you be so cruel to your own sister? Cousin Beth family should come first. Shame on you for being so selfish. Uncle David, Your grandfather would be so disappointed in how you are treating your sister. The last one stung particularly, coming from the uncle who had agreed to sell the family home in the first place. I blocked them all, temporarily needing space to think clearly, without the guilt trips and manipulation. Maya came over that evening with takeout and wine. I showed her the security upgrades and Rachel's advice. "You are doing the right thing," she assured me. "Their behavior is completely inappropriate. They are trying to bulldoze your boundaries because it has always worked before." "I just cannot believe they expected me to give up my house," I said, still processing the audacity of their demands. "Because they are used to you giving in," Maya pointed out. "Think about it. You gave up your dream school because they wanted you closer to home. You ended relationships they did not approve of. You turned down career opportunities to meet their expectations. They thought this would be no different." She was right, and the realization was both painful and liberating. This pattern had defined our family dynamic for my entire adult life, but I had never seen it so clearly before. The next day, I returned to work, throwing myself into coding projects to distract from the family drama. During lunch, I searched property records online, curious about the full history of my house. What I found was illuminating. The house had indeed belonged to my grandparents from 1948 until 1965, when they moved to the suburbs but kept it as a rental property. After my grandfather's death, it passed to my mother and uncle in 1988. They sold it in 2003, using the proceeds to help Olivia and Frank buy their first home in an upscale suburb. That house had been foreclosed on in 2008, after Frank lost his job during the financial crisis, and they fell behind on payments. My parents then helped them purchase a second, smaller home in 2010, which they sold at a loss in 2015, when Frank decided to start his own business in another part of the city. Since then, they had been renting with my parents, subsidizing their rent whenever Frank's income fluctuated. The pattern was clear. My sister and brother-in-law had received financial help repeatedly, while I had worked and saved on my own. And now that I had achieved something independently, they felt entitled to claim it. Strengthened by this perspective, I drafted a clear email to my entire family. "I want to clarify some things about the current situation with my house. I purchased this property legally with my own money without knowing its connection to our family history. I understand that Olivia and Frank are in a difficult position, but that does not entitle them to my home. I am willing to help in other ways. I can assist with their housing search or even offer a loan toward their security deposit. What I cannot and will not do is give up my home. I ask that you respect my boundaries. Do not come to my house uninvited. Do not contact me with guilt trips or accusations. And please understand that this decision is final." I ended the email with links to several rental listings in good school districts that were within their budget, showing I was willing to be supportive in appropriate ways. The responses varied. My parents did not reply at all. Olivia sent a terse, "Thanks, but no thanks." Some extended family members apologized for getting involved without knowing the full story. Others doubled down on their criticism. Through it all, I stood firm. I installed the security system Ethan had recommended, complete with cameras covering every entrance. I reported Julia to the Real Estate Commission for the ethics violation of giving out my keys without permission. I kept detailed records of every interaction, just as Rachel had advised. A week after the confrontation, my father showed up alone at my door. The security system alerted me to his presence, and I watched on the app as he stood on my porch looking directly at the camera. "Pam, I know you can see me," he said. "I just want to talk. No pressure, no demands. Just talk." I opened the door, but did not invite him in. "We can talk on the porch." He nodded, accepting this boundary. We sat on the porch, swinging an awkward silence between us. Your mother and I have been thinking, he finally said. We may have overreacted about the house situation. I waited, not making it easier for him. It was a shock seeing you buy this place out of the blue. It brought up a lot of complicated feelings about your grandparents, about promises we made, but that does not excuse how we handled it. No, it does not, I agreed. We are trying to help Olivia and Frank find another place, something more sustainable for their situation, and we are encouraging Frank to look for steady employment rather than the commission-based work he has been doing. I nodded, cautiously optimistic about this change in approach. I cannot speak for your mother or your sister right now, he continued. They are still processing. But I wanted you to know that I respect that this is your house. You earned it. And I am proud of you for that, even if I have not shown it. It was not a full apology, but it was a start. As he stood to leave, he handed me a small package. I found this in the attic. I thought you might like to have it. Inside was a black and white photograph of my grandparents standing in front of my house on what appeared to be moving day in 1948. They looked young and hopeful, much as I had felt the day I received my keys. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. As he walked to his car, I called after him. Dad, I meant what I said in my email. I am happy to help them find a new place, just not this one. He nodded. I know, and that is more than fair. It was a small step toward healing, but an important one. For the first time, someone in my family had acknowledged my right to my own space, my own boundaries. It felt like a victory, hard won, but worth the fight. The weeks following the confrontation with my family were some of the most challenging of my adult life. The silence from my mother and Olivia was deafening, punctuated only by occasional messages about family obligations or pointed comments about their ongoing housing search. Frank had apparently taken my father's advice and found steady employment at an insurance company, a job that paid less than his commission work but offered stability they desperately needed. Through mutual friends, I learned that they had found a 3-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood, not as spacious as my house, but comfortable and within their budget. My offer to help with the deposit went unanswered, their pride still wounded by the confrontation. During this time, I threw myself into making my house truly my own. I planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, painted the kitchen cabinets a cheerful blue, and finally unpacked the last of my boxes. Each improvement felt like a statement. This is my home, my sanctuary, my achievement. Eleanor became a regular visitor, bringing homemade bread and neighborhood gossip. She never pried about the family situation, but offered quiet support in her own way. Maya and my other friends rallied around me, hosting game nights at my place and helping with home projects. On a personal level, I used this time to reflect on the patterns that had defined my family relationships for so long. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Melissa Chen, who specialized in family dynamics and boundary setting. Our weekly sessions helped me understand that standing up for myself was not selfish, but necessary for my well-being. The guilt you feel is programmed, Dr. Chen explained during one session. Your family trained you to prioritize their needs above your own. Breaking that pattern feels wrong, because it contradicts everything they taught you about your role in the family system. Slowly, I began to recognize and challenge the internal voice that questioned my right to prioritize my own needs. I practiced saying no to requests that did not serve me, starting with small things at work, and gradually applying the same boundaries to family interactions. 3 months after the confrontation, my mother called. Our conversation was stilted, carefully navigating around the elephant in the room. She talked about a cousin's wedding, a new restaurant in their neighborhood, Olivia's oldest starting soccer. I shared updates about work and my garden, keeping things light. As we were about to hang up, she surprised me. "The blue hydrangeas you planted in the front yard look lovely. I drove by last week." It was the closest she had come to acknowledging my home as mine. "Thank you," I said. Grandma had blue hydrangeas at the old house, according to the photos. I thought it would be a nice connection. "She would like that," my mother said softly. Then, after a pause, "Maybe I could come see the garden sometime. Just to visit, not to, well, you know." "I would like that," I replied, feeling a tentative bridge beginning to form. A week later, she came over for tea. We sat in the garden talking about neutral topics, carefully rebuilding a relationship that had been damaged but not destroyed. She brought a box of old family photos, including several of my grandparents in the house during their years there. "Your grandfather built these garden beds," she said, pointing to the raised wooden boxes where my vegetables were growing. "He loved gardening. You get that from him, I think." It was the first time she had ever connected me to my grandfather in that way, acknowledging a shared trait rather than comparing me unfavorably to Olivia. It felt like a small but significant shift. Over the next few months, these visits became regular, though my father rarely joined her. Olivia remained distant, still nursing her disappointment. But at Christmas, 6 months after the confrontation, she sent a card with a photo of her family in front of their new apartment, the children smiling broadly. The message inside was simple: "Happy holidays from our home to yours." It was an olive branch, small but meaningful. I called her that evening, and though our conversation was brief and somewhat awkward, it was a start. The true test came in April, on the 1-year anniversary of my moving into the house. I decided to host a small gathering, inviting my friends, and after much consideration, my family. Maya helped me prepare both practically with food and decorations, and emotionally for whatever might unfold. "Remember, this is your home," she reminded me as we set up. "You are inviting them on your terms. You get to set the boundaries." To my surprise, they all came: my parents, Olivia, and Frank, even the children. The atmosphere was initially tense, but as the evening progressed, it gradually warmed. The kids explored the backyard, delighting in the treehouse I had built with Ethan's help. My father admired the improvements I had made to the original features of the house. Olivia commented on my decorating choices with genuine appreciation rather than envy. After dinner, as we sat in the living room with coffee and dessert, my mother raised her glass. "I would like to make a toast," she said, her voice slightly tremulous, "to Pam for bringing this house back into our family and for making it such a beautiful home." The simple acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. It was not a full apology for everything that had happened, but it was an acceptance of my place in this house, my right to this space. Later, as guests were leaving, Olivia pulled me aside. "The kids would love to come visit more often if that is okay with you. They really like the treehouse." "I would like that," I said sincerely. "They are welcome any time." With advance notice, I added with a small smile. She nodded, understanding the gentle boundary. "Of course." As I closed the door behind the last guest, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. This house, which had become the center of so much family drama, had also become the place where new, healthier relationships were beginning to form. By standing firm in my right to my own space, I had paradoxically created room for better connections with my family. The journey had been painful but necessary. I had learned that true family support means respecting each other's independence and choices, not just making demands in the name of family obligation. I had discovered my own strength and the importance of establishing clear boundaries. Most importantly, I had learned that it is possible to love your family deeply while still loving and prioritizing yourself. 1 year after buying my house, I finally felt truly at home, not just within these walls, but within myself. The house that had once belonged to my grandparents had come full circle back into the family, but on new terms, terms that honored both its history and its future. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure to protect something important to you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to set boundaries even with the people we love most. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember your space, your rules, your peace of mind.